The San Francisco Police Department responded to a deadly freak accident on Columbus Avenue yesterday evening. There is only one confirmed victim, though his identity is currently unknown.
A newscaster on Channel 7 reads, his words emanating from a television set placed on the dresser of a familiar motel room. These words strike Jazmine's ears, rousing her to consciousness. Surrounding her are all the trappings of her current abode, but something about this facade rings as false to her. It wasn't her room, but it felt like it could be. As Jazmine stirs, she finds she cannot move her limbs. They have been tied behind her head, lashed to the bed frame of the mattress she was set upon with rope. The cords tighten as she struggles. In a panic, our heroine calls upon limelight, but her rainbow savior flickers before her eyes, unable to manifest itself before it vanishes from sight. Jazmine soon realizes why. Beyond the noise of the television, a sound much akin to rainfall reverberates from the tile bathroom nearby. A steaming hot shower fills the entire motel room with mist. The details of the news broadcast draws her attention back to the television. Perhaps the report could shed some light on the gap of information between when she was attacked and now. The newscaster continues.
The SFPD have released a sketch of the victim. If anyone knows the identity of this mysterious individual, please contact your local police station.
Flashing on the television is a sketch artist rendition of the man who attacked Jazmine. She recognizes his iconic stitches and assorted accoutrements.
He's the one who...
Jazmine whispers to herself, but she is interrupted before she could complete the thought. The entry door to the motel unlatches and creaks open. Steiner Optics walks inside, noting that Jazmine has regained consciousness.
You're awake. That's good.
He beams, but Jazmine is far less pleased than Optics seems to be. She glares at the oncoming predator, defiantly curling her unrestrained legs inward into a protective position. Misreading her movements, he realizes the television set right beside him has been on the whole time, and so he switches it off as though that were the trigger for her anxiety.
Don't worry. It's all over now. I saved you from him. One loose wire and a gentle nudge was enough.
As Optics approaches, Jazmine glances pointedly to the doorway behind him.
He forgot to lock the door?
She acutely observes. Jazmine knows this could very well be her one and only chance to escape, and so she shrewdly submits to her predicament. For now, at least.
Steiner Optics, was it? You actually want me to thank you for this?
Jazmine spits back. The obsessive fan halts his approach, but puffs out a sigh of gratitude as he again refuses to read Jazmine's behavior for what it was.
You remember my name?
He responds with an incredulous smile. All the while, this distraction has allowed Jazmine to break one of her nails in a way that forms a clandestine saw blade.
You're not even listening to me, are you?
Jazmine barks at the delusional fool blocking her path to escape.
Just let me go, Optics, and we'll forget this ever happened. Deal?
Optics sighs in disappointment.
You don't understand.
He grumbles softly, shaking his head.
I'm doing this for you, Jazmine.
The cord tying our heroine's hands together snaps. It loosens ever so slightly, but just enough that a single tug with adequate strength could break those bonds. With one abrupt motion, Jazmine frees herself from her restraints and leaps from the bed. Making a beeline for the door, she pushes an off-guard Optics out of her way with a punch to his gut. With the other hand, Jazmine reaches for the handle, and yet, when she turns the knob and pushes the door open, it resists.
What?
Jazmine first glances down to notice that the myriad of locks were all indeed unlatched before a curiosity catches her eyes. A purple tentacle dips into the bottom corner of the door as though the lumber were a well of ink, and the tentacle a fountain pen. When the strange appendage is retracted, she follows its path back to Optics. What she sees renders her helpless. Her knees buckle, but Jazmine is able to retain a degree of her composure by supporting her weight against the door. Behind Optics, still recovering from the blow to his gut, stands a familiar figure. Dreamweaver, dressed in black leather and straps, strikes a haunting resemblance to her childhood stalker. That memory sparks in Jazmine's mind, and she comes to a grave conclusion.
It's you.
She struggles to admit.
You've been following me this whole time.
That's right. You should know about Stans now. This is your first time seeing him like this. Don't worry. Dreamweaver's a lot like Limelight. He's pretty harmless. He uses memory to travel across the flow of time.
Optics explains.
I got so excited you were awake that I forgot to lock the door, but when you tried to make a run for it, I had to use Dreamweaver to slip a wedge outside to keep you in.
The specter of Jazmine's lifelong torment has taken form and stands before her. Terrified, she can only take one step backwards before her heel hits the door. There is nowhere left for her to run. She is caught, paralyzed in fear. Optics frowns at her expression, disappointed.
I just can't let you leave, Jazz. It's too dangerous. I've been watching you for a long time. Even longer than Alexa. And I know what's best for you.
He gently reaches out to her hand, clutching desperately at the handle, but is stopped as she screams in horror.
Don't touch me!
Jazmine's voice rings out before she can register it as her own.
Why are you so afraid of me?
He wonders as he takes another step toward her, desperate to convince her.
I'm just trying to protect you, Jazz!
Reaching into his open jumpsuit, Optics takes out a newspaper and holds it to Jazmine's eye level.
See?
He insists. The headline portends of another Square Biz killer victim, the date in the corner being of a future time, some months down the line of the current date. But what is most shocking of all is the subject matter. The victim, Jazmine Olivia Joplin.
Dreamweaver can only take me to the past, but one day I met myself from the future, and he gave me this. What was I supposed to do? Even with this power, I can't directly contradict the past. The memories I'm woven into can't change. But I think, no, I have to believe I can still change the future. This is all for your own good.
One night, 15 years ago, a winter storm submerged the landscape of a small Czechoslovakian town in a blanket of white. A young raven-haired girl of roughly 10 years of age was pulled from the safety of her family's farmhouse by cryptic figures. Their backs to the only source of light, a slew of military vehicles parked behind them cast shadows upon their faces.
Come with us, little one.
One of the men rumbled in low, commanding tones, his voice thick with a heavy Russian accent. The little girl resisted, reaching back to the home she had known her entire life. Her family could only watch as she was dragged away, and as the darkness of the night mingled with the blustering snow, neither the girl nor her family could see each other anymore.
Hard to believe this is all over 120 acres.
The man mumbled as he squinted to take in the shrouded landscape despite the lack of visibility. He dragged her beyond the armed Soviet soldiers, who remained standing in place facing the farmhouse. The little girl sniffled, but not from the cold.
This land and all she produces belongs to the collective,
He chided.
and so do your miraculous talents. You have a gift, little one, that you must share with us. Consider this a trade.
Finally, the girl spoke, asking the only question for which she cared to have an answer. She didn't question where her own future would bring her. What was this strange land she was being carted off to? Would she be subject to painful experimentation? Would her supernatural abilities be used to harm others? No. She was far more concerned about what she was leaving behind.
If I go with you, will my family be safe?
The man paused. After a beat of silence and time to consider his words, he responded with a chortle of sincerity.
Yes, of course. As long as you come with us, we won't harm a hair on their heads.
Unseen and unheard by anyone present but the little girl, 2 ghostly satellites followed behind her. They announced their findings in her native Czech. A lie. Alexa Zivojinovic would cry the entire way to Moscow. Flakes of snow fall before azure eyes. In a San Francisco cafe, snow mysteriously fills the interior of the restaurant, left vacated by the anomaly. Weston Archer shivers from the cold as he takes in the absurdity, hugging himself for warmth. As he glances about the room, he notices small winged creatures fluttering about the ceiling, each flap of their wings generating gusts of the powder.
Someone's stand can even control the weather?
He wonders aloud, teeth chattering. Alexa, unfazed by the layers of snow slowly building in the cafe, suggests he question his observations.
Calm down, Weston.
She advises.
Look in front of you. Can you even see your breath?
True enough, the air surrounding Weston wasn't cold enough that his breath would freeze.
I don't understand.
He stammers, his body refusing to believe what his eyes were seeing.
I'm freezing.
Just then, he notices something in Alexa's hand. One of his photographs, a campfire that exudes warmth due to his standability, somehow picked from his vest pocket. Within that pocket now lies only one photograph of the set. The fish market ice, left isolated and unchecked by the photograph of the campfire. He digs it out, realizing that it was the source of his temperature change. As soon as it was no longer against his person, he feels a shift in the air.
What does she plan on doing with it?
He wonders, but puts the thought aside for the time being. Grabbing a handful of the snow, Weston crunches the powder in his gloved hands and observes it carefully.
So it isn't snowing. Then what is it?
Alexa clenches her fist, shooting a glare to the ceiling where the miniature monstrosities flitter about as if dancing.
Sugar.
She responds.
Tchaikovsky, my superior in the KGB, has a stand that generates concentrated sugar crystals.
Alexa holds out her hand, letting one such flake of sugar rest upon it gently. The structure of the sugar crystal is nearly identical to that of a snowflake. It's impossible to tell at a glance that it isn't snow.
Anything the sugar is incorporated into will be irresistibly sweet, even in the most bitter of coffee. You won't notice the taste of the poison until it's far too late.
At this revelation, Weston gulps, looking at the broken coffee cup shattered on the floor nearby. A cold sweat forms on his brow as he realizes he was moments away from succumbing to such a fate. Turning back to face Weston, Alexa intends to deliver the name of her superior stand to her newfound confederate.
And this stand is called
Sugar Plum Fairy.
A harsh, masculine Russian voice bellows back. Alexa flinches. Her eyes search for the owner of this familiar voice. Hidden in the back of the restaurant, a stately figure lounges in one of the booths. With a series of claps, he makes his exact location known.
Of course, I never intended for you to drink the coffee.
The man chortles. The raven-haired Russian agent casually strides up to the booth, taking in the figure's appearance. Reclining and snacking on a decadent chocolate candy bar, a portly man with cotton candy hair grins at her. Of course, she knew who it was without having to confirm this. Her superior in the KGB, the man who snatched her from her home as a child. A contemptible man named Zephyr Tchaikovsky.
You were never a fan of sweet things, after all.
He admits while gluttonously swallowing the last of his chocolate bar.
Even when you were a child.
Alexa folds her arms and snarks down to him.
Yes, when it comes to taste, I prefer spicy
She cocks an eyebrow.
and blonde.
Tchaikovsky, his fingers stained in chocolate, waves Alexa's secret Cyrillic note in the air and smudges the page upon opening it.
You did well to retrieve this information about the American pig's secret weapon, Gypsy Eyes. But I overheard you're on a mission to save a kidnapped friend? I don't recall giving you an order like that.
He huffs. Alexa has no words with which to respond. She narrows her eyes and tightens every muscle in her body, prepared for the worst to come. Tchaikovsky drops the note from his line of sight to instead bear his gaze at his underling. In a low tone of voice, he questions where her allegiance lies.
But this isn't written in your handwriting, Alexa. Who did you share this information with?
Alexa refuses to comply, and Tchaikovsky stands to meet her obstinance eye to eye. He steps out of the booth and locks his feet in place before her own.
Pack your bags.
He commands.
We're sending you back to Moscow. It seems you require more training. Isn't that right, Moody?
The sound of a bell chiming catches Alexa's attention. She turns to see a scraggly elder of Asian descent dressed in the garb of a Tibetan monk walk through the door. He beams a smile her way, though his amicable expression is hidden by a long beard and mustache that reaches beyond his torso. Alexa identifies the old man by more than just his name.
Master Moody.
She acknowledges.
My, you haven't aged a day since you turned 18.
The old man muses.
Private Eyes, on the other hand, seems to have regressed. Come now, I thought I taught you better.
Tchaikovsky laughs gruffly.
You see now why I brought you here.
He asks Moody. Pulling on his beard, Moody appears to be in agreement with the seasoned Russian agent.
Indeed. It seems my precious student is in need of remedial lessons.
Alexa's body shudders in frustration as only one thought echoes loudly in her mind. She recalls the last time she ever looked upon her family and her home.
It's happening again.
In the blink of an eye, she would be taken away from the people and place that she loved against her will.
Not again.
She swears under her breath. The laughter of her senior ceases at the tone of her defiance.
What was that?
Steeling herself, Alexa raises her voice.
I said not again. I'm not going anywhere.
In one singular smooth action, Tchaikovsky takes out his own Makarov and pulls the trigger from her foot, and Weston shouts in horror as she falls to one knee.
Alexa!
Tchaikovsky looks down at her dryly.
Of course your stand was never the problem. It's that attitude of yours.
However, Alexa looks beyond her commanding officer and instead to her former teacher, contempt and betrayal in her eyes.
The state I understand, but you... How could you? I trusted you, Master.
I see that fire in your eyes hasn't changed.
Moody smirks as he crosses his legs and begins to curiously float in midair, a pillow of a cloud forming from underneath.
You should know by now. I'm only here to see how far it's taken you. Nothing more, nothing less.
Behind his words, Alexa recognizes a deeper hidden meaning that Tchaikovsky is unaware of, and she smiles to herself with newfound resolve. She looks back to the candy-colored glutton and asks,
So you read my friend's letter, did you? It seems you missed a crucial detail.
Confounded, Tchaikovsky unfurls the note once again and scans its contents. A curious watermark of a T-shaped symbol catches his eye, and with a furrowed brow he mutters the postscript aloud.
Anyone other than Alexa Zivojinovic who reads this note will regret it.
As if on cue, the paper clasps around his index fingers, binding him within a Chinese finger trap as he drops his gun. Seizing this opportunity, Alexa sweep kicks the Makarov toward Weston.
I can handle myself, but if anything happens to you, shoot!
She orders as the weapon slides his way.
Alexa, these aren't the things I'm used to shooting.
He responds nervously while picking up the pistol regardless.
Better in your hands.
She admits as she looks back up at Tchaikovsky, trying to free himself in vain.
Funny thing about sugar, it doesn't just rot your teeth. It's particularly dangerous when melted.
Alexa reaches down onto the sugar-coated tile, scooping up a mound of the crystalline substance with Weston's photo of the campfire. The pile of snow melts upon contact, and with a flick of the wrist toward the bumbling owner, molten caramel flies directly into his face. Cutting through the screams, hysterical laughter fills the cafe as the floating monk points derisively at the suffering red agent.
Oh, she got you good. That's gonna leave a mark.
You bitch!
Tchaikovsky exclaims at Alexa while writhing in pain and crushing the sugar beneath his boots. As he stumbles about, she draws her own gun and prepares to aim, only to pause as he freezes before her with a grin.
You must think you're so clever. But do you know why sugar is so dangerous? A high calorie count means...
He trails off. Alexa impatiently fires, and Tchaikovsky kicks up the dust under his feet and into the air, creating a cloud of powdered sugar between them. As the gun fires, he finishes.
It's highly combustible!
The spark from Alexa's Makarov ignites the powder in the air and causes a small explosion, sending both her and her superior in opposite directions within the cafe. Tchaikovsky chuckles from the bar where he landed and announces proudly,
I'd reconsider firing your weapon so irresponsibly next time. Finely grained sugar is no different than gunpowder.
Her ears still ringing from the explosion, Alexa finds herself sprawled uncomfortably across a booth. She groans, pushing herself up into a sitting position where her hand touches the sharp edge of glass in the seat, and she realizes the window behind her has been shattered. Knowing there is no time for hesitation, she clutches the shard and launches herself across the room toward Tchaikovsky with killer intent. Her blade finds its target. Blood trickles down from Alexa's hand, staining the white sugar red. But when she draws back the glass from her senior officer's stomach, the weapon comes back clean.
Whew. If I hadn't sent out Handle with care, you'd be a dead man, Tchaikovsky.
The wise Tibetan monk chides with a chuckle. Furious, Alexa throws down the makeshift knife, and a red shroud reveals itself wrapped around the repugnant Soviet spy. A stone globe peeks out from behind him with a permanent smile etched onto his face before unwrapping itself around Tchaikovsky and returning to its master, Moody.
I never said I'd make it easy on you.
The monk admits to his pupil with a shrug. Still ensnared by the finger trap, Alexa's adversary stumbles up to his feet and away from the bar stools that had broken his earlier fall. The strike that should have carved his belly open instead tore through the leather cushion of one of the stools. It's as if her attack passed right through Tchaikovsky and into the chair. He takes note of the damage and scoffs.
Ha! You call this a fatal wound, Alexa? I've watched you kill men with less.
I know Handle with care better than you. The moment I stuck that blade in you, I felt no give. There was no point in wasting the energy when it would all pass right through you.
Alexa sneers. Handle with care gleefully floats around its user, its red cape trailing in its wake. Moody puts a gentle hand atop its head and explains.
I see you've retained some of my lessons, but how much do you actually remember of our time together? Because it looks to me all you're doing is relying on your stand.
A look of light concentration crosses his face as he reaches out before him, and a glass of orange juice floats past Alexa and Tchaikovsky into Moody's open hand. After downing the beverage in one go and sighing in relief of the refreshment, he expounds.
Stands are only one projection of the mind. There is an endless reservoir of possibilities with the right amount of thought. The air beneath you could be as dense as a fluffy cushion upon which to sit, and the distance it takes to grab a delicious glass of orange juice could be crossed with a flick of the wrist. If only with a simple thought.
Tchaikovsky grumbles, preoccupying himself with the finger trap to deflect from his ignorance of the topic at hand.
If only the oh-so-great and wise master could stop showing off and explain how to get out of this damned contraption.
In increasing frustration, he pulls his fingers apart only for the paper to pinch his flesh harder. His eyes still on Alexa, Moody continues his lesson while gesticulating to her foolish superior.
Or you could simply remain stuck in place forever, irrationally trying the same thing over and over again.
A barbaric scream erupts from the portly Russian as he jumps into the air toward one of the sugar-plum fairies nearest to him, and does the only thing he knows how to do. Devour it in one bite. In the blink of an eye, the finger trap is suspended in the air where Tchaikovsky once stood. It falls by its lonesome to the floor. Alexa calls on Private Eyes to try and track her vanished opponent, but neither satellite can obtain a reading on his movements. The modulated sound of Tchaikovsky's voice echoes throughout the room, reverberating across every surface and vibrating through her very core.
Since you began your mission in America, I've learned more about Sugar Plum Fairy. It turns out when I consume my own stand, I metabolize a near infinite amount of energy from this sugar.
Alexa looks toward the source of his voice growing ever closer and witnesses with her own eyes a vision of Tchaikovsky approaching like a walking optical illusion. Drawing ever closer, the haze of his figure suggests inhuman speeds, yet his stride is meandering at best, and the snow-white sugar beneath him billows in the air. Absurdly, he walks right through the tables between them as if a phantasmic apparition.
Every atom in my body vibrates and allows me to pass through matter. Consequently, it does so at the same frequency as Private Eyes' sensors refresh rate. To your stand. I am invisible.
Suddenly, the blanket of snow resting on the ground is whipped into a frenzied blizzard, rendering Alexa's visibility next to nothing. She squints her eyes in the face of it, but can't even see her hand in front of her face, let alone her enemy.
And now, with this snowstorm, I've disappeared right before your own 2 eyes.
Interesting choice of words there,
Shouts Moody. A friendly hand touches Alexa's shoulder, and she turns to see her teacher lean in close to her with a grin. Peering from the wrinkles of his brow, a third eye erupts and meets her gaze. Another formation of his created from pure, concentrated thought.
What lies before you is a reflection of his furious, uncontrolled mind. Think back, Alexa. You've always had private eyes. At some point, long before Tchaikovsky, you had a thought so pure and unfettered, so pristine and powerful it gave birth to your stand. Training as much as he wants, he will never learn that. He can grow no stronger than he is now. But you, child, only you can create something more powerful than him with thought alone.
Alexa takes a deep breath and centers herself, heeding her mentor's words. She closes her eyes and lets her mind drift beyond the snow of the cafe, and back to the primordial darkness of her mind. From the moment Alexa was born into this world, she was met with this very absence of light. A waking world of darkness, smothered in scents, sounds, and tastes. But ultimately, it was a world without context, cold and lonesome. Yet one day, the desire to step into the light of her unseen universe grew so strong she could finally behold it. But it was not with her own eyes. Private Eyes was born from this yearning, and soon thereafter, as if a crutch allowing her to walk again, she could see. Alexa was deemed a miracle child. Not only was her blindness cured, but little Alexa could see even further beyond what any human should have been capable of. However, in the here and now, Private Eyes cannot help her. Alexa remains blinded by the storm, lost in a labyrinth of her primal fear.
I wanted to be with them forever, but they were taken from me. I've been living in that moment ever since. That same damn night. But then...
A thought rings in her mind. Finally, Alexa finds her way through the blackness once more. From the darkness, a spark of light comes to mind brighter than the sun, and a familiar touch warms her hand. When Alexa looks to the vision forming in her mind, Jazmine's face becomes clear. The first person in 15 years to have never deceived her. With a strength she never had as a child, Alexa finally escapes from that horrible memory of the night she was taken and proclaims,
I will not let you stand in the way of the ones I love anymore!
Her eyes snap open, beholding 3 private eyes in front of her. Within the chrome polish of the perfect sphere, she witnesses her own third eye made manifest. Through the fog of sugar snow, Tchaikovsky breaks through and barrels toward her unexpectedly, his fist at the ready. Alexa does not flinch and takes the attack directly to her stomach. But what should have been a devastating assault seems only to be a minor inconvenience. Lined up like a Newton's cradle behind Alexa, all 3 private eyes absorb the impact and transfer it to the bar behind her, shattering it to pieces. Moody chuckles in glee.
Using your private eyes, you made your own version of Handle with Care. Funny enough, not what I saw coming.
I'm through playing with your children's games.
Tchaikovsky grumbles, retreating back into the mist.
You're a grown woman now. Your punishment will be more severe.
The storm resurges as Tchaikovsky uses his immense speeds to agitate the remaining sugar produced by Sugar Plum Fairy lying in piles on the floor. His voice bounces from every corner of the cafe, making him impossible to locate by sound.
What happens when you rub 2 sticks together?
The sound of your 2 brain cells trying to form a thought?
Alexa responds sardonically.
Friction!
He booms.
And with friction comes heat. That explosion from before will be nothing compared to this.
To each end of the room, Alexa sends away all 3 private eyes. While Tchaikovsky remains both visibly and audibly imperceptible, the 3 satellites at her disposal provide a new method of detection. Rather than focusing directly on her enemy, Alexa uses private eyes to track the disturbances of the airborne sugar left in his wake and triangulate his location in real time. Reaching to the chair at her feet, Alexa lifts the stool by its leg and glowers at Moody.
You said before you wanted to see how far the fire in my eyes has taken me. Let me show you.
She grips the chair tight and reels back, making direct eye contact with her mentor.
Oh my!
Moody remarks, seeing the murderous intent behind her words. Handle with Care quickly wraps its master within its protective mantle as Alexa swings with all her might, the wooden bludgeon exploding into a million tiny splinters. The force of the impact passes completely through Moody and blows back the storm, revealing the image of Tchaikovsky directly behind the monk. His excited atoms disrupted by the energy of Alexa's attack, the statuesque red agent crumbles bit by bit, atom by atom, turning into nothing but dust. With the disappearance of its user, Sugar Plum Fairy and its snow are no more. Alexa falls to her knees, the third eye on her brow receding, and heaves a sigh of relief while her numerous private eyes are reduced back to 2. Moody scratches his near-bald head, impressed at his pupil's ingenuity.
In the end, his atoms were as agitated as his own state of mind. Unstable. And you used that against him. Not even I would have thought of that.
He reaches out a hand to his former student, which she takes as he helps her back to her feet.
I couldn't have done it without a little inspiration.
Alexa muses.
Oh, shucks.
I wasn't referring to you.
Moody chuckles knowingly and pokes her bare forehead where her third eye used to be.
You still let go of that thought once the threat was over and lost the extra private eye. You've still got a long way to go before you're able to maintain it. All that baggage weighing you down. But hey, it's a start.
He stretches, ready to put his legs back to use after having spent so long floating on a cloud.
I suppose it's about time I head back to Moscow. The KGB should probably know that one of their lead operatives has been, well, I'll think of something. But I'll make sure to tell them you're on the right track. No one else should be getting in your hair anymore.
Moody makes his way out the same door he entered from, waving to Alexa over his shoulder. He knows this will be the last time he sees his precious pupil, as she has nothing left from him to learn. He looks back to Alexa for a moment and smiles before the door closes.
Take back your life, kiddo. You worked hard for it.
Weston wheezes, choking upon the fading sugar snow as the blizzard subsides and reveals Alexa standing next to her former teacher. He watches as the elder leaves the cafe and looks around nervously for the man's dangerous companion. He calls out to the KGB agent turned model.
Alexa? What happened?